The snow fell thick outside the old apartment corridor when the knock came at exactly 7:30 p.m. Daniel Brooks froze mid-sentence, the pencil he'd been using to check his daughter's homework slipping from his fingers and clattering onto the worn linoleum floor. No one came looking for him at this hour, especially not in the dead of winter when the cold cut straight through to the bone. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in a black wool coat, standing ramrod straight, her eyes sharp and cold as ice itself. When he opened the door, the frigid air rushed in along with a voice so familiar it physically hurt. "Daniel, I've come to collect a debt you've owed me for 20 years. The woman, standing in his doorway, looked like she'd stepped out of a boardroom and into his life without warning. Her coat was tailored perfectly, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun, and there was something about the way she held herself confident, commanding, untouchable that made Daniel's cramped apartment feel even smaller than it was. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. 20 years had passed, but he'd know those eyes anywhere. "Evelyn?" His voice came out rougher than he intended, catching on the name he hadn't spoken aloud in 2 decades. Behind him, he heard the creak of a chair. Lily, his 12-year-old daughter, emerging from the kitchen with curious eyes. "Dad? Who is it?" Evelyn's gaze shifted past Daniel to the girl, and something flickered across her face too quick to read, too complex to name. Then the mask of composure slid back into place. "May I come in?" Evelyn asked, though it wasn't really a question. "We need to talk. It's about your promise." Daniel felt his chest tighten. His promise. The words he'd spoken on a summer night when they were both 18, standing on the football field behind their high school while fireworks exploded overhead. Words he'd meant with every fiber of his being, before life had torn them apart without explanation. "If you ever need me, I'll be there." He'd said it. He'd meant it, and now she was here, in the middle of winter, after 20 years of silence, to collect. "Lily, go finish your homework in your room," Daniel said quietly, his eyes never leaving Evelyn's face. His daughter hesitated, her sharp instincts picking up on the tension crackling in the air. But she was a good kid, perceptive, yes, but respectful of boundaries. She nodded slowly and retreated, casting one last curious glance at the stranger in the expensive coat. When the door to Lily's room clicked shut, Daniel stepped aside. "Come in." Evelyn entered his small world with the careful grace of someone navigating foreign territory. Her heels clicked against the floor as she took in the modest space, the second-hand furniture, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, the photographs of Lily taped to the refrigerator. The contrast between them couldn't have been starker. Daniel shut the door against the cold and turned to face the woman who had once been his entire world. 20 years, he said softly. You disappeared without a word. Your family moved away. I called, I wrote letters, nothing. And now you show up talking about debts? Evelyn's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. I know, and I'm sorry. But I'm here now because I have no choice. She paused, and for just a moment, the ice in her eyes melted into something raw and desperate. My father is dying, Daniel. And before he goes, he needs to see you. The apartment felt smaller with Evelyn in it, as if her presence commanded more space than the physical room could provide. Daniel gestured toward the worn couch, the one he'd bought from a thrift store 6 years ago, when Lily complained the old one made her back hurt. Sit, please. Evelyn perched on the edge of the cushion, her posture impeccable even in this humble setting. She set her leather handbag beside her with deliberate care, and Daniel caught a glimpse of the designer logo, the kind of accessory that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He moved to the kitchen, his hands needing something to do. Coffee? It's not fancy, but it's hot. Thank you. As the coffee maker sputtered to life, Daniel studied her from across the counter. The girl he'd loved had grown into a woman of steel and polish. Everything about her screamed success, from the way she sat to the subtle scent of expensive perfume that had followed her inside. So, he said, keeping his voice neutral, CEO, huh? I saw an article about you a few years back. Chen Global Industries. Your father's company. My company now, Evelyn corrected softly. He stepped down 3 years ago when his health started failing. Daniel poured 2 mugs of coffee. Black for both, he remembered that about her at least. Some things didn't change. He carried them to the living room and handed her one, then settled into the armchair across from her. The old space heater in the corner hummed steadily, fighting against the draft seeping through the window frames. Outside, snow continued to fall in thick, lazy flakes, obscuring the streetlights and muffling the sounds of the city. I'm still trying to understand why you're here, Evelyn. Your father made it very clear 20 years ago that I wasn't good enough for his daughter. He had his people deliver the message in person, told me to stay away from you, that you were going to Oxford and I'd only hold you back. Evelyn flinched, the first real crack in her armor. He told you that? You didn't know? She shook her head slowly, her fingers tightening around the coffee mug. I thought you'd moved on. That you'd chosen not to follow me. My father said you'd agreed it was for the best. The revelation hung between them like a weight. All these years, both of them had been operating on lies. Before Daniel could respond, Lily's door cracked open. His daughter emerged, supposedly heading to the bathroom, but her eyes tracked to their guest with undisguised curiosity. Lily, this is Evelyn Chen. She's an old friend. Hi, Lily said, her voice cautious but polite. She had her mother's features soft and gentle, but her father's sharp observation skills. Daniel watched his daughter take in Evelyn's expensive clothing, her confident bearing, the way she seemed to occupy space so differently than anyone who usually visited their home. Hello, Lily. Evelyn's voice softened considerably. Your father has told me nothing about you, which means I have a lot of catching up to do. Lily smiled slightly at that, some of her wariness easing. He didn't mention you either. Must have been a really long time ago. 20 years. That's older than me. It is indeed. The exchange was brief, but Daniel saw something shift in Evelyn's expression, a warmth he hadn't seen since she'd arrived. Quickly shuddered, but definitely there. After Lily retreated to the bathroom, Evelyn turned back to Daniel. She seems like a wonderful girl. She is. She's everything. He set his mug down. Her mother passed away 4 years ago. Breast cancer. It's been just the 2 of us since then. I'm sorry. Thank you. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But you didn't come here to catch up on my life, Evelyn. You said your father is dying, and he wants to see me. Why? Evelyn took a long breath, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of confession. Because he wants to apologize for what he did to us, for the lies he told, and because, she paused, meeting his eyes directly, because I finally learned the truth about what happened 20 years ago, and I realized that the debt isn't yours to pay, it's his. But I'm the one who has to make it right. Daniel stood and walked to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass against the darkness outside. Behind him, he could feel Evelyn's gaze on his back. Do you remember that night? He asked quietly. The 4th of July, right before you left for Oxford? Every detail, Evelyn replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He closed his eyes, and suddenly he was 18 again, sitting on the 50-yard line of an empty football field while fireworks exploded overhead. Evelyn had been wearing a white sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she'd been crying because the next morning she was leaving for England, and neither of them knew when they'd see each other again. You said you were scared, Daniel continued. The memory so vivid it felt like yesterday. That you didn't know if you could handle being so far from home, from everything you knew. From me? And you took my face in your hands, Evelyn said from behind him, and you told me that no matter what happened, no matter where life took us, if I ever needed you, you'd be there. That I could count on you for anything. Daniel turned to face her. I meant it, Evelyn. Every word. I know you did. She set her coffee mug down with trembling hands. That's why what happened next destroyed me. What did happen? I need to understand. One day, we were making plans for how we'd manage the distance, talking about me visiting during winter break, and the next, nothing. You were gone. Your phone was disconnected. Your family moved. It was like you'd been erased from my life. Evelyn stood, her composure finally cracking. Because that's exactly what my father intended. He didn't just discourage you, Daniel. He orchestrated everything. He had my phone disconnected, intercepted your letters, and fed me a steady stream of lies about how you'd moved on with someone else. He showed me fake photos, fake messages. He convinced me you'd never really loved me, that it had all been teenage infatuation on both our parts. The revelation hit Daniel like a physical blow. And you believed him? I was 18 and alone in a foreign country. Evelyn's voice rose, raw with old pain. I was homesick and heartbroken, and he was my father. Why would I think he'd lie about something like that? By the time I came home for Christmas, you were already at State College, and I was too proud and too hurt to reach out. I threw myself into my studies, into building a career, into becoming someone who didn't need anyone. Daniel sank back into the armchair, processing this. 20 years of believing she'd simply chosen her future over him, and it had all been manipulation. Why tell me now? He asked. Why not just let the past stay buried? Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking less like a powerful CEO and more like the scared girl he'd once held on that football field. Because I found the letters. All of them. They were in a box in my father's study, along with a journal where he documented every lie he told, every obstacle he put in your way. He kept them like trophies. Her voice broke. And when I confronted him 2 weeks ago, when the doctors said he had maybe a month left, he finally admitted everything. He said he'd done it because he thought you weren't good enough for me, that you'd hold me back from my potential. He thought he was protecting me. Instead, he stole 20 years from both of us. Daniel felt a complex knot of emotions tighten in his chest. Anger, grief, loss for what might have been. But underneath it all was something else. A strange sense of relief that it hadn't been a choice. That the girl he'd loved hadn't simply walked away. So the debt, he said slowly. You're saying I don't owe you anything. Your father owes us both. Yes. But he's dying, Daniel. And as angry as I am, as much as I hate what he did, he's still my father. He asked to see you, to apologize in person, to try to make some kind of peace before. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. From down the hall, Daniel could hear Lily's soft footsteps returning to her room, the click of her door shutting. His daughter, his responsibility, his world. He'd built a good life despite the heartbreak, a modest but honest life teaching high school English, raising his child, finding small joys in everyday moments. But the question remained. Did he owe Victor Chen an audience? Did he owe Evelyn closure? When? He finally asked. Tomorrow. If you're willing. He's at our family estate outside the city. The doctors don't think he has much time left. Daniel looked at this woman who had once been everything to him, now standing in his small apartment like a visitor from another world. Snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in white, freezing time just like it had been frozen for 20 years. I'll think about it, he said quietly. That's all I can promise right now. Evelyn nodded, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she looked genuinely grateful. That's more than I had any right to ask for. After Evelyn left, Daniel stood in the doorway watching her black sedan disappear into the snowy night, red taillights fading like dying embers. The cold air bit at his skin, but he stayed there anyway, needing the sharp sting to ground him in reality. Behind him, he heard Lily's door open again. He closed the front door and turned to find his daughter standing in the hallway, her homework abandoned, concern etched across her young face. Who was that really? Daniel sighed and walked to the couch, patting the cushion beside him. Lily settled in close, the way she used to when she was little and needed reassurance after a bad dream. Someone I knew a long time ago. Before your mom. A girlfriend? Something like that. Lily processed this with the seriousness she applied to everything. She's really rich, isn't she? But you're not mad about that. You're mad about something else. Sometimes Daniel forgot how perceptive his daughter was. I'm not mad exactly, more confused. Sad, maybe. She told me some things tonight that explained a lot about my past, but also made me realize I've been carrying hurt for 20 years that was based on lies. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. What kind of lies? The kind that kept two people apart who cared about each other. Her father didn't approve of me, thought I wasn't good enough for his daughter, so he made sure we couldn't stay in touch. That's really mean. Yeah, it was. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the heater hum and the wind rattle the windows. Finally, Lily asked, "Are you going to see him, her dad?" "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to tell him exactly what I think of what he did. Another part just wants to leave the past where it is. Mom used to say that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Daniel smiled sadly. His late wife, Sarah, had been full of wisdom like that. She'd known about Evelyn, he'd told her everything early in their relationship, and she'd never been threatened by the ghost of his first love. She'd understood that his heart had enough room for both his past and his present. Your mom was right about a lot of things. She also said you were too good at forgiving people, that you let them off too easy. She said that too, huh? Yeah. She said it's because you always try to understand everyone's reasons for doing stuff, even when they hurt you. Daniel pulled his daughter closer. What do you think I should do? Lily was quiet for a long moment, considering. I think if he's dying and wants to say sorry, maybe you should let him. Not for him, but for you, so you don't wonder later what he would have said. Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought. His 12-year-old had more emotional intelligence than most adults he knew. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. She smiled up at him. Plus, I kind of want to know what happens next. It's like a real-life story. And you taught me that good stories need proper endings. Daniel laughed despite himself. This isn't a novel, kiddo. I know. But it's still a story. Your story. And Miss Chen's story. And you don't know how it ends yet. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel sat at his small desk and pulled out an old shoebox from the bottom drawer. Inside were the remnants of that summer, 20 years ago, ticket stubs from movies, a dried corsage from prom, a few photographs that had survived his eventual purge after college. He found the one he was looking for. Himself and Evelyn at 18, sitting on the hood of his beat-up Ford Ranger, her head on his shoulder, both of them laughing at something long forgotten. They looked so young, so certain that love was enough to overcome anything. He ran his thumb over the faded image. That boy in the photograph had made a promise, and he'd meant it with his whole heart. Even now, after everything, Daniel couldn't quite let go of the person he'd been, someone who kept his word, who showed up when needed, who believed in doing the right thing even when it hurt. The question was, what was the right thing now? His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. It's Evelyn. I got your number from directory services. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you for hearing me out tonight. Whatever you decide, I understand. But if you do come tomorrow, the address is 4782 Wintergreen Estate, off Highway 76. Come around 2 p.m. if you can. And Daniel, I'm sorry for everything. Daniel stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed out a reply. I'll be there. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Because Lily was right, this story needed a proper ending. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to finally close the chapter that had been left hanging for 2 decades. The snow continued to fall outside his window, each flake unique and temporary, covering the old with a blanket of new white. By morning, the city would look different, cleaner, fresher, like it had been given a chance to start over. Daniel hoped the same might be true for him. The Wintergreen estate sat at the end of a long, tree-lined drive that wound through 10 acres of snow-covered grounds. Daniel's 15-year-old Toyota looked absurdly out of place as he pulled up to the circular driveway, where a fountain sat frozen and silent, its carved angels suspended mid-pour. The house itself was a testament to old money, 3 stories of stone and glass, with ivy climbing the walls and smoke curling from multiple chimneys. This was the world Evelyn had grown up in. The world her father had wanted to protect by removing Daniel from the equation. A housekeeper answered his knock and led him through a marble foyer, past oil paintings and antique furniture that probably cost more than Daniel would earn in a lifetime. The luxury felt oppressive rather than impressive, each expensive object a reminder of the gap between his life and theirs. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, down a quiet hallway, and finally stopped at a door at the end. The housekeeper knocked softly. "Mr. Chen, your guest has arrived. Send him in," came a weak voice from inside. The housekeeper opened the door and gestured for Daniel to enter. The room beyond was large but felt strangely intimate. A bedroom converted into a hospice space, with medical equipment beside an enormous bed. The curtains were drawn back to reveal floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered gardens. In the bed, barely visible among the white linens, lay Victor Chen. The last time Daniel had seen him, Victor had been a force of nature, tall, commanding, with steel-gray hair, and the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet when he entered. The man in the bed bore little resemblance to that memory. Cancer had reduced him to a shadow, his frame skeletal, his skin papery and pale. Only his eyes retained some of their old sharpness. "Daniel Brooks." Victor's voice was barely above a whisper. "You came. I wasn't sure I would," Daniel admitted, remaining by the door. "But you did. That says something about your character. It always did." Victor lifted a trembling hand toward the chair beside the bed. "Please, sit. I don't have the strength for long conversations, and I have things I need to say." Daniel hesitated, then moved to the chair. Up close, he could see the IV line in Victor's arm, the morphine drip beside the bed, the oxygen cannula beneath his nose. Death was no longer approaching. It was already in the room, patient and inevitable. "Where's Evelyn?" Daniel asked. "Downstairs. I asked her to let us speak privately first." Victor took a labored breath. "She wanted to be here, but I told her this was between you and me. What I did was my choice, my sin to confess. Why?" The question came out harder than Daniel intended. "Why did you do it? We were kids. We weren't talking about marriage or anything permanent. We loved each other. I know." Victor closed his eyes. "That's exactly why I did it. Because you did love each other, and I could see how deeply. I watched you two together that whole summer, saw how my daughter looked at you, how you looked at her, like you'd found something precious and rare. Then why tear us apart? Because I was a fool who thought he knew better." Victor's eyes opened again, glistening with tears. "Because I looked at you and saw a working-class kid with no family money, no connections, no clear path to the kind of success I thought my daughter deserved. I saw someone who would keep her here, in this small city, when she could have the whole world. So you decided for her. Yes, I decided for her. I lied to her about you, and I lied to you about her. I made sure every letter you sent was intercepted. I had people follow you at college to make sure you weren't trying to contact her. I even fabricated evidence of you dating other women to show Evelyn during her first Christmas home." The confession spilled out in broken fragments, each admission punctuated by difficult breaths. Daniel sat frozen, listening to the systematic dismantling of his past. "She threw herself into work after that," Victor continued. "Graduated top of her class, came home to join the company, rose through the ranks faster than anyone expected. She became exactly what I'd envisioned, successful, powerful, respected. She built an empire. But she did it alone, Daniel said quietly. You gave her success and took away her happiness. Yes, a tear rolled down Victor's weathered cheek. And I was too proud, too stubborn to admit my mistake. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that she was better off, that you both would move on and find other people, other lives. I did move on. I married a wonderful woman, had a beautiful daughter. I know, Evelyn told me. But she also told me that your wife passed away, and I can only imagine that pain. Victor's hand reached out, trembling. And Evelyn, she never moved on. She dated, certainly. She even came close to marriage once. But she never let anyone truly in. She built walls around her heart and threw herself into work, into being the daughter I wanted rather than the woman she might have been. Daniel felt something twist in his chest, not quite sympathy, but something close to it. Why tell me this now? Why not take it to your grave? Because I'm a coward, Victor said with brutal honesty. Because I'm lying here dying, and I'm terrified of facing whatever comes next with this weight on my soul. Because my daughter deserves better than to spend the rest of her life believing she wasn't loved the way I know she was. And because you deserve to know that none of it was your fault. None of it was Evelyn's choice. It was all me. The silence that followed was heavy, with 20 years of loss. I can't forgive you, Daniel finally said. I know, I'm not asking for forgiveness, though I probably don't deserve the mercy of you even being here. Victor's breathing had become more labored. I'm asking you to do one thing for me. Not as a favor, but as an act of basic human decency. What? Talk to Evelyn. Really talk to her. Let her explain what these 20 years have been like for her. Let her tell you about the walls she built, the life she created out of the ruins I left her with. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. And if there's any chance, any possibility that you might find your way back to each other, don't let my mistakes define your future the way they defined your past. Daniel found Evelyn in a sitting room on the first floor, staring out at the snow-covered garden. She'd changed from her CEO armor into dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, looking more like the girl he'd known than the woman who'd appeared at his door last night. How is he? She asked without turning around. Weak, but he said what he needed to say. Daniel moved to stand beside her at the window. Outside, snow continued its patient work of transforming the landscape. And I don't know what to feel. I'm angry, but he's dying. I'm hurt, but it was 20 years ago. I want to hold on to resentment, but what good would it do? That's very magnanimous of you. There was a bitter edge to Evelyn's voice. I haven't been as noble. I spent the last 2 weeks alternating between rage and grief, wanting to scream at him and wanting to hold him before he's gone. He's your father. It's different. Is it? She finally turned to look at him. He took something from you too. He stole your choice, your right to decide your own future. At least I get to be angry at him. You're allowed to be angry too, Daniel. I am angry, Daniel admitted, but I'm also exhausted. Carrying anger takes energy I don't have anymore. Between raising Lily alone, teaching 5 classes a day, trying to make ends meet, I just don't have room for holding grudges against dying men. Evelyn studied his face for a long moment. You've changed. You used to be so passionate about everything, so ready to charge into every fight. Life changed me. Losing Sarah changed me. Becoming a father changed me. He paused. What about you? Your father said you never really moved on. She flinched, but didn't look away. Is this the part where I confess that I'm a lonely workaholic who sacrificed personal happiness for professional success? Only if it's true. Evelyn walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a photo album, flipping to a page marked with a ribbon. She held it out to Daniel. The page showed a photograph of a younger Evelyn in a wedding dress, standing alone by a window. No groom. No guests. Just her in a dress that had never been worn to an altar. His name was Marcus. We dated for 3 years, He proposed, I said yes, we set a date. Her voice was carefully neutral. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was looking through some old boxes and found your letters, all of them, saved by my father like some kind of sick trophy collection. When I confronted him, when I learned the truth about what he'd done, I called off the wedding. Because of me? Because I realized I'd been building my life on a foundation of lies. Because I'd convinced myself I could never trust anyone again. And I'd chosen Marcus precisely because he was safe and didn't make me feel too much. Because reading your letters, all those words I never got to see, made me realize I'd been living a half-life. She closed the album. I called off the wedding, I took over the company completely, and I built even higher walls. My father got his wish. I became exactly the daughter he'd wanted. Successful, powerful, alone. Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They stood together, in silence, watching the snow fall. He asked me to talk to you, Daniel finally said. Really talk? About what the last 20 years have been like, and are you willing to do that? To hear about my self-imposed exile from feeling anything real? I think I am. But not here. Not in this house, with all its ghosts and your father dying upstairs. He pulled out his phone. Tomorrow. Come to dinner at my place. Lily's been asking questions anyway, she might as well get the whole story. And besides, you should see how normal people live. A small smile touched Evelyn's lips, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Normal people? People who buy second-hand furniture and worry about heating bills and think a fancy dinner is takeout from somewhere nicer than the corner pizza place. I'd like that, she said quietly. I'd like that very much. Before Daniel left, he returned to Victor's room one last time. The older man was sleeping, his breathing shallow and rattling. Daniel stood in the doorway, looking at this man who had shaped so much of his life through manipulation and lies. He thought about Lily's words. If he's dying and wants to say sorry, maybe you should let him. Not for him, but for you. I heard what you said, Daniel spoke to the sleeping man. And I'm choosing not to hate you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve better than to carry that weight. Lily deserves better than to have a father who's bitter and resentful. So I'm letting it go. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. He turned to leave, then paused. And I'll talk to Evelyn. I'll give her what you took from her, a choice. What she does with it is up to her. Not you, not me. Just her. Victor didn't stir, but Daniel felt lighter as he left the room, as if speaking the words had broken something loose inside him. 20 years of frozen hurt beginning to thaw. Outside, the snow had stopped, and the late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, turning the white landscape brilliant and blinding. Daniel stood on the steps of the estate, taking a breath of cold, clean air, and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Not for a second chance at young love, they were both too changed, too marked by life for that kind of fairy tale. But hope for understanding, for closure, for the possibility of building something new from the ruins of what might have been. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. How did it go? Are you okay? He typed back, I'm okay. I'll tell you everything when I get home. And I invited Miss Chen to dinner tomorrow. Hope that's all right. The response came immediately. Really? That's kind of exciting. Can we order from Romano's? Their pasta's way better than our cooking, Daniel smiled. Romano's it is. Love you, kiddo. Love you too, Dad. He got in his old Toyota and started the long drive back to his small apartment, his simple life, his beautiful daughter. Behind him, the wintergreen estate grew smaller in his rearview mirror, shrinking back into the past where it belonged. Ahead of him, the road home beckoned, familiar and safe. But now, for the first time in 20 years, there was also something else on the horizon. Possibility. Evelyn arrived at Daniel's apartment at 6:30 the next evening, 45 minutes late and carrying 3 bags of groceries that definitely weren't from Romano's. I know you said takeout, she explained as Daniel stared at the bags in confusion. But I couldn't help myself. I stopped at that market on 5th and saw fresh pasta, and then I thought about making sauce from scratch. And she trailed off, looking suddenly uncertain. I'm sorry. This is your home. I shouldn't have presumed. No, it's fine. Daniel took 2 of the bags from her. I just didn't know you cooked. I don't, really, but I've been taking classes. Cooking is one of the few things that makes me stop thinking about work. Lily appeared from her room, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes widened at the sight of the groceries. Are you actually going to cook? Here? Evelyn laughed. A real laugh, spontaneous and warm. If your kitchen can handle it, and if you two are willing to be guinea pigs. Our kitchen is like 12 square feet, Lily warned. Perfect. At my place, the kitchen is bigger than this entire apartment, and I still manage to only use one corner of it. They fell into an easy rhythm that surprised Daniel. Evelyn took command of the small kitchen with an efficiency that spoke to genuine skill, despite her claims otherwise. She set Lily to work tearing basil while she minced garlic and crushed tomatoes. Daniel found himself relegated to opening wine and staying out of the way, which was probably for the best since his cooking skills topped out at grilled cheese and pasta from a jar. So, Lily said as she worked, her casual tone belying her obvious curiosity. You and my dad were in love when you were young? Lily, Daniel warned. What? You said I'd get the whole story. I'm just starting at the beginning. Evelyn smiled at her cutting board. Yes, we were in love. Or at least, we thought we were. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference when you're 18. But you know now? Know what? If it was real or just thinking. Evelyn paused, her knife hovering over the garlic. That's a very good question, I suppose. Yes. Looking back with 20 years of distance, I can say it was real. Maybe not forever real. Maybe not the kind of love that would have survived college and career changes and becoming different people. But real, in that moment. Absolutely. Lily considered this while she worked. My mom told Dad that they fell in love slowly, like she didn't even notice it happening, until one day she realized she couldn't imagine her life without him. The statement hung in the air, not accusatory but thoughtful. Daniel felt his chest tighten at the mention of Sarah. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman, Evelyn said gently. She was. She was really sick for a long time before she died, but she never got mean about it. She just kept trying to make sure Dad and I would be okay without her. Lily's hands stilled. She made me promise to make sure Dad didn't stay alone forever. She said he was too good at taking care of other people and not good enough at letting other people take care of him. Lily, Daniel said again, more firmly this time. I'm just saying, Mom would want you to be happy. Evelyn caught Daniel's eye across the kitchen, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that this conversation was happening whether they wanted it to or not, driven by the frank wisdom of a 12-year-old who'd learned too young about loss and time running out. Tell me about your mom, Evelyn said to Lily. If you want to, and Lily did. While they cooked, she talked about Sarah, her gentleness, her terrible jokes, the way she'd sung off-key while making breakfast, how she'd insisted on celebrating every small victory and turning ordinary days into occasions. Daniel listened, contributing occasionally, surprised by how much it didn't hurt to remember. Sarah deserved to be remembered, to be spoken of with love rather than just mourned in silence. By the time they sat down to eat, something had shifted in the apartment. The meal Evelyn had prepared was simple but perfect pasta, with fresh tomato sauce, garlic bread, a salad with a tangy vinaigrette. They ate at the small table, elbow to elbow, and it felt normal, like something that could become a regular occurrence. Okay, Lily said after her second helping. Now tell me the part where Miss Chen's dad was a villain. Lily, what? That's what you said last night. That her dad lied to both of you and kept you apart. Evelyn set down her fork. Your daughter is very direct. She gets that from her mother. I like her. And so, they told the story not in detail, not with all the hurt and anger, but the basic framework. How they'd been separated. How they'd each been fed lies. How 20 years had passed before the truth came out. Lily listened with the intensity she brought to everything. Processing, analyzing. That's really sad, she finally said. But also kind of romantic in a tragic way. Like Romeo and Juliet, but without the dying. Let's hope it stays that way, Daniel said dryly. So, what happens now? Lily looked between them. Are you guys going to date? Try again? Or is this just, like, closure? Lily, that's not really. I don't know, Evelyn interrupted, meeting Lily's gaze directly. Your dad and I are very different people than we were at 18. We've both lived entire lives since then. We've both loved other people, lost people, built careers and identities. We can't just pick up where we left off because that place doesn't exist anymore. But you could start somewhere new, Lily pointed out. It doesn't have to be the same thing as before. It could be a totally different thing. When did you become a relationship counselor? Daniel asked his daughter. I watch a lot of TV while you're grading papers. Despite himself, Daniel laughed. Evelyn joined in, and soon all three of them were laughing, the tension breaking like ice in spring. It felt good. It felt possible. After dinner, Lily excused herself to do homework, though Daniel suspected she was actually giving them space. He and Evelyn moved to the couch with coffee, maintaining a careful distance between them. She's remarkable, Evelyn said. You've done an incredible job raising her. I can't take all the credit. Sarah laid a lot of the groundwork before. He didn't finish the sentence. I'm sorry I never got to meet her. From what Lily says, I think I would have liked her. You would have. And she would have liked you too. She wasn't the jealous type. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, the streetlights had come on, casting orange glows through the falling snow. Can I ask you something? Evelyn finally said. And you can tell me if I'm overstepping. Go ahead. Do you think you could ever see me as something other than the girl you loved at 18? Because that's the problem I keep running into. I look at you and I see echoes of who we were, but I don't really know who you are now. And I think the reverse is probably true for you. Daniel considered this. You're right. I mean, I know facts about you. You run a massive company. You're successful. You're clearly still sharp as hell. But I don't know what makes you laugh. What you do on Sunday mornings. Whether you're a night owl or an early bird. What kind of movies you watch when you're sad. I don't watch movies when I'm sad, Evelyn said. I go to my office and work until I'm too tired to feel anything. It's not healthy, but it's what I do. See? That's something I didn't know. What about you? What do you do when you're sad? Daniel thought about it. I go through Lily's baby photos. Remind myself of the good things I have. The love that's still present even when other love is gone. And then I usually end up crying in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, which is when Lily appears and makes me tea and reminds me that life goes on. She really is remarkable. Yeah, she is. Evelyn set her coffee cup down. I should go. It's late, and you both have school tomorrow. Okay, but neither of them moved. They sat there on the worn couch in the small apartment, two people trying to figure out if the past could inform a future without defining it. Thank you for tonight, Evelyn finally said. For letting me be here. For letting me meet Lily. For not slamming the door in my face when I showed up demanding debts. Thank you for cooking, and for being honest, and for... Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. For being willing to start from zero instead of trying to pretend we can go back to 20 years ago. Starting from zero, Evelyn repeated. I like that. Clean slate? No expectations. No expectations, Daniel agreed. She stood, and he walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned back. Would it be okay if I came by again? Maybe took Lily out for coffee or something? I promise I won't overstep. Won't try to be a mother figure or anything like that, but I'd like to get to know her better if you're both comfortable with that." Daniel found himself nodding. "I think she'd like that. But Evelyn, she lost her mother. She's doing well, but she's still healing. If you're going to be part of her life, you have to be all in. No disappearing when work gets crazy or things get complicated." "I understand. And Daniel, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I'm going to anyway. If you're going to let me into your lives, you have to promise me the same thing. Don't shut me out if it gets difficult. Don't let old hurt dictate new possibilities." "Fair enough." They stood at the threshold, and for a moment, it felt like they were 18 again, saying goodbye on a summer night, not knowing when they'd see each other again. But they were older now, marked by loss and life, and instead of promises they couldn't keep, they offered each other something more valuable: honesty and the space to figure things out. After Evelyn left, Daniel found Lily sitting on her bed, ostensibly reading, but clearly waiting. "So?" she asked. "So what? So are you going to give it a shot? Seeing if something's there?" Daniel sat on the edge of her bed. "Maybe. Slowly. No rushing. No expectations. Just seeing what happens when two old friends try to become new friends." Lily smiled. "That sounds really mature and boring, Dad. Welcome to adult relationships, kiddo. Still, I think it's cool. She seems nice, and she made really good pasta." "She did make really good pasta. And she looked at you like you matter, not like you're just some single dad doing his best. Like you're actually somebody." Daniel felt something catch in his throat. "Is that how you think people see me?" "Sometimes. At school things, at parent-teacher conferences, you're always just Lily's dad who does his best. But Miss Chen looked at you like you're a whole person with your own story. I liked that." He pulled his daughter into a hug. "You're too smart for your own good. Mom always said that too. Your mom was right about everything, except her prediction that you'd stay single forever. She might have been wrong about that." Daniel laughed. "We'll see, Lil. We'll see." That night, as snow continued to fall and the city grew quiet, 3 people in different places thought about what might come next. In a small apartment, a single father lay awake, wondering if he was brave enough to try again. In a luxury penthouse downtown, a CEO sat by her window, allowing herself to hope for the first time in years. And in a hospital bed in a mansion surrounded by snow, a dying man closed his eyes, knowing that he'd at least tried to set right what he'd broken. The future remained uncertain. But perhaps that was the point. Life didn't offer guarantees or neat resolutions. It offered only the present moment and the choice of what to do with it. And sometimes that was enough. Victor Chen died 4 days later, on a Tuesday morning when the snow had finally stopped and weak sunlight broke through the clouds. Evelyn called Daniel from the estate, her voice hollow and small. "He's gone." "He went peacefully," the hospice nurse said. "Just stopped breathing." "I'm sorry, Evelyn. Can you come?" "To the funeral. I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't think I can do this alone." "Of course. When?" "Friday, 2 o'clock. I'll send you the details." The funeral was held at a historic church downtown, the kind with soaring ceilings and stained glass windows that painted the pews in colored light. It was well-attended business associates, company employees, society figures who'd known Victor for decades. Daniel sat in the back, feeling out of place in his only suit, a 10-year-old black number he'd worn to Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. Evelyn stood at the front, receiving condolences with the same polished composure she'd probably learned to perfect over years of board meetings and high-stakes negotiations. But Daniel could see the cracks the way her hands shook slightly when she accepted flowers, the tight set of her jaw, the exhaustion in her eyes. The service was traditional and impersonal. A minister who'd never really known Victor spoke in generalities about legacy and contribution. A business partner gave a eulogy about vision and leadership. No one mentioned the man who'd manipulated his daughter's life, who'd kept two young people apart, who'd died with regrets he'd barely had time to express. Afterward, at the reception at the Wintergreen estate, Daniel found Evelyn standing alone in that same sitting room where they'd talked days before. She'd removed her shoes, and her perfectly styled hair was coming loose from its pins. "Thank you for coming," she said without turning around. "I saw you in the back. I promised I would. People keep telling me how lucky I was to have such a strong father, such a visionary leader. They talk about his business acumen, his strategy, his success." Her voice was brittle. "No one knows that he was also the man who destroyed the best thing I ever had because he thought he knew better. They don't need to know. Let them remember their version. You can remember yours." She turned to face him, and he saw tears streaming down her face, the first real emotion she'd shown all day. "I'm so angry at him, Daniel. Even now, even with him dead, I'm furious. But I'm also devastated, because he was my father, and I loved him, and now he's gone, and I'll never get the chance to really work through what he did. He gets to just leave, and I have to figure out how to live with what he left behind." Daniel crossed the room and, without thinking too much about it, pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, her expensive dress wrinkling, her makeup smearing against his suit jacket, and cried with the force of someone who'd been holding it together for far too long. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. He just held her while she grieved for the father she'd lost, for the father she'd never really had, for 20 years of living in the shadow of his choices. Eventually, her sobs quieted. She pulled back, wiping at her eyes. "God, I'm a mess. You're allowed to be a mess. Your father just died. I haven't cried like that in years. Since," she paused, "since I found those letters and realized what he'd done. Grief is complicated. You can miss someone and be angry at them at the same time. Is that how you felt when Sarah died?" The question surprised him. "No, I was just sad. Sarah never gave me anything to be angry about. She fought so hard to stay, to be there for Lily, for me. She earned a clean grief. That must be nice, in a terrible way. To have loved someone who loved you back, without conditions, without manipulation. It is. But it doesn't mean I can't understand your grief being messier." A woman in a severe black suit appeared in the doorway. "Miss Chen, the lawyer needs to speak with you about the will." Evelyn composed herself with visible effort, tucking away the vulnerable woman and resurrecting the CEO. "I'll be right there." After the woman left, Evelyn turned back to Daniel. "Will you stay? Not for the legal stuff, but just stay until this is over? I'll understand if you can't, if you need to get back to Lily. I told Lily I might be late. She's having dinner with the neighbor. I can stay as long as you need." Relief flooded Evelyn's face. "Thank you." The reading of the will was held in Victor's study, surrounded by the books and awards and photographs of a life well lived, at least on the surface. The lawyer, a gray-haired man with wire-rimmed glasses, read through the bulk of the estate the company shares going to Evelyn, various bequests to long-term employees, donations to charities. Then he paused. "There's one more item, a letter addressed to both Miss Evelyn Chen and Mr. Daniel Brooks, to be read together after the will was executed." Daniel and Evelyn exchanged glances. The lawyer produced an envelope, opened it, and began to read Victor's words written in the weeks before his death, in shaking handwriting barely legible on the page. "Evelyn and Daniel, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. I hope I managed to say some of what needed saying before the end, but I know words can never fully repair what I broke. Evelyn, my daughter, you became everything I hoped you would be and nothing I deserved. You are brilliant, strong, capable. You built an empire and proved that a woman can command respect in spaces that try to diminish her. But I also took from you the chance to build a life alongside your career, and for that I am profoundly sorry. Daniel, you were everything I feared: kind, loyal, content with enough rather than driven for more. I saw those qualities as weaknesses when they were actually your greatest strengths. You would have made my daughter happy in ways I never understood mattered. I'm leaving the Wintergreen estate to both of you jointly. Not to force you together, you're both too smart and too strong to be manipulated that way, but because it seems fitting that the place where I tried to control your lives should become a place where you have control. Sell it, keep it, turn it into something new. The choice is yours to make together. I hope you can find it in yourselves to forgive an old man who loved poorly but meant well. And if you can't forgive, I hope at least you can move forward without the weight of my mistakes holding you back. Build something good from the ruins I left you. Victor Chen. The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn stared at the lawyer, her face pale. He left the estate to both of us? Yes. Jointly owned? Equal shares. It requires mutual agreement to sell or significantly modify. He set it up as an irrevocable trust. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. I don't want his estate. I don't want anything from him. I understand your feelings, Mr. Brooks, but the will is quite clear. You can certainly disclaim your interest, but if you do, the property goes to charity rather than to Miss Chen. It seems Mr. Chen wanted to ensure you both had to at least discuss what to do with it. Still manipulating from beyond the grave, Evelyn said bitterly. But there was something else in her voice too, a hint of dark amusement. After everyone else left, after the lawyer packed up his papers and the last guests departed, Evelyn and Daniel stood alone in the now silent mansion. "What do we do?" she asked. Daniel walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered grounds. I think he wasn't entirely wrong. Not about manipulating us, but about this being a choice we should make together. Everything else in our lives, the separation, the lies, the missed years, was done to us. This is something we actually get to decide. So what do you want to do with it? Honestly? Sell it. Take my half and put it in a college fund for Lily. Maybe fix up the apartment. Quit worrying about money for the first time in my life. Use it to build security for my daughter. That's very practical. What would you do? Evelyn was quiet for a long time. I'd probably sell it too. I have my penthouse. I don't need this place with all its ghosts. But, she paused, but part of me wonders if there's something else we could do. Something that would actually mean something. Like what? I don't know yet. They left together as evening fell, standing on the front steps, one last time. Thank you, Evelyn said. For staying. For being here. For not running when this all got complicated. Where would I run to? My life isn't exactly drama-free. She smiled a small, sad smile, but genuine. Still. Thank you. As Daniel drove home through the dark streets, he thought about Victor's final manipulation. It should have made him angry, but instead he felt something closer to weary amusement. The old man had been trying, in his clumsy way, to give them something he'd taken the chance to make decisions together, to build something from shared choice rather than external pressure. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was, perhaps, an acknowledgement that even in death, Victor Chen was still learning about the people he'd tried so hard to control. When Daniel got home, he found Lily still awake, curled up on the couch with a book. How was it? She asked. Complicated. Sad. He left me part of his estate in the will. Lily's eyes widened. Like money? Like his whole property. Split with Evelyn. We have to decide what to do with it together. That's weird. Yeah, it is. But also kind of cool. Like a puzzle you two have to solve. Daniel sat beside his daughter. When did you become so optimistic about all this? I'm not optimistic. I'm realistic. You and Miss Chen have to talk now. Have to work together. Have to figure stuff out. Whether you like it or not, you're connected. Might as well make the best of it. From the mouths of babes, Daniel thought for the second time in a week. You're right, he admitted. Might as well make the best of it. Outside, the temperature had dropped again, and new snow began to fall. But inside the small apartment, With his wise daughter beside him and the promise of complicated tomorrows ahead, Daniel felt warm enough. The winter would eventually end. And when it did, perhaps something new could grow in the spaces left by old grief and older mistakes. 6 months passed. Spring came reluctantly, winter clinging to the city longer than usual, before finally giving way to tentative green shoots and warmer days. In that time, the world shifted in small, almost imperceptible ways. Victor Chen's estate remained unsold, caught in discussions between Daniel and Evelyn about what to do with it. They met regularly, sometimes at coffee shops, sometimes at Daniel's apartment, once or twice at Evelyn's penthouse when they needed to review legal documents. The conversations were practical at first, focused on property assessments and potential buyers, but gradually they expanded into other territory. Daniel learned that Evelyn woke at 5 every morning and ran 6 miles before work, that she listened to old jazz when she needed to think, that she'd never learned to swim despite growing up with an Olympic-sized pool. She learned that he still wrote poetry sometimes when he couldn't sleep, that he could identify any bird by its call, that he'd once dreamed of being a novelist before life had steered him toward teaching. They were, slowly and carefully, becoming friends. Lily had turned 13 in April, and Evelyn had asked if she could take her to lunch for her birthday. Daniel had agreed, watching with a mixture of emotions as his daughter and this woman from his past had driven off together, returning 3 hours later laughing about something he'd never quite gotten the full story on. After that, Evelyn started appearing more regularly, not as a guest, but as someone who simply fit. She came to Lily's school play, sitting between Daniel and the Johnsons from next door. She helped Lily shop for a dress for the 8th grade dance when Daniel admitted he was out of his depth. She showed up on random Tuesday evenings with Thai food and stayed to watch whatever medical drama Lily was currently obsessed with. It was comfortable, easy, and that terrified Daniel more than he wanted to admit. "You know she's waiting for you to make a move, right?" Lily said one night after Evelyn had left. They were cleaning up dinner dishes, and Daniel had been lost in thought. "What? Miss Chen? She likes you. Likes you. Even I can see that. And I'm 13 and supposedly oblivious about romance. Lily, Dad, come on. She's been coming around for months. She asks about you when I text her. She always makes sure she looks nice when she knows she's going to see you. She laughs at your terrible jokes. My jokes aren't that terrible. They really are. But she laughs anyway, which means she likes you." Daniel set down the dish he was washing. "It's not that simple, kiddo. There's a lot of history there, a lot of excuses," Lily interrupted. "Look, I know you loved Mom. I know that losing her hurt really bad. But she literally made me promise to make sure you didn't stay alone forever. She wanted you to be happy. I am happy. You're content. That's different. You're good at being content with what you have, at not asking for more. But Miss Chen makes you smile in a way that's different from your normal smile. Like you're actually enjoying something instead of just being grateful it's not worse." The observation stung because it was true. Daniel had gotten very good at being content, at finding satisfaction in stability and routine. But around Evelyn, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: possibility. The sense that life might still hold surprises worth risking comfort for. "What if I mess it up?" he asked his daughter. "What if we try and it doesn't work and then I've lost her all over again, and this time it's my fault?" Lily dried her hands and looked at him with an expression far too mature for 13. "What if you don't try, and you spend the rest of your life wondering what might have happened? What if she's the thing you're supposed to risk being content for? When did you get so wise? Somebody smart raised me." The next Friday, Daniel asked Evelyn if she wanted to take a walk, just the two of them. No Lily as buffer, no legal documents as excuse. She said yes immediately, and they met at the park where the cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom, painting the paths in pale pink. They walked in companionable silence for a while, watching joggers and dog walkers and young parents pushing strollers. It was a beautiful day, the kind that made you grateful to be alive. "Can I tell you something?" Evelyn finally said. "Of course. These past 6 months have been the happiest I've been in years. And it terrifies me because I don't trust happy. Every time something good happens in my life, it gets taken away. My mother died when I was 10. You were taken from me at 18. Every relationship I've tried since has fallen apart. So I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong. For this," she gestured between them, "to prove it was just temporary." Daniel stopped walking. "I'm scared too. Losing Sarah nearly destroyed me. The only thing that got me through was knowing I had to be strong for Lily. The idea of opening myself up to that kind of loss again." He shook his head. "But I keep thinking about what my daughter said, that there's a difference between being content and being happy. And which are you? Right now, in this moment." He looked at her, really looked at her. The sun was catching in her hair, and her eyes were bright with vulnerability and hope and fear all mixed together. She'd become so familiar over these months, this woman who was both a stranger and the girl he'd once loved. He knew her coffee order and her laugh, and the way she bit her lip when she was thinking hard about something. "Happy," he said. "I'm happy." Evelyn's breath caught. "Daniel, I don't know what this is," he continued. "I don't know if we're trying to recapture something from 20 years ago or building something completely new. I don't know if it'll work or if we'll discover we're too different now, too shaped by other lives. But I know that I want to find out. If you do, I do. God, I do. I've been wanting to say something for months, but I didn't want to push. Didn't want to be the one who disrupted what we have. What we have isn't disrupted by acknowledging that it might be something more." They stood facing each other on the path, cherry blossoms falling around them like snow, people streaming past on either side. It felt like standing at a threshold, one foot in the safe past and one reaching toward an uncertain future. Evelyn took his hand, the first intentional romantic touch they'd shared since reuniting. Her fingers laced through his, familiar and strange, all at once. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "I think we keep doing what we've been doing, but we stop pretending it's just friendship. We acknowledge that this might be something more, and we give it space to become whatever it's supposed to be. No rushing? No rushing. We've already lost 20 years. What's a few more months of taking it slow?" Evelyn smiled, and it was the kind of smile that transformed her entire face, erasing the CEO and revealing the woman underneath. "I can work with slow." They continued their walk, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing about Lily's upcoming science fair project. About Evelyn's latest board meeting, about whether to turn the Wintergreen estate into a school or a community center or just sell it and be done with the past. For the first time in months, Daniel felt like the future wasn't just something to be endured, but something to look forward to. It was fragile and new and easily broken, but it was real, and sometimes real was enough. September arrived with cool winds and the promise of change. Lily was starting high school, a milestone that made Daniel feel both proud and ancient. The girl who'd once fit in the crook of his arm was now nearly as tall as he was, smart and confident and ready to take on the world. Evelyn had become part of their family's rhythm, not replacing anyone, not trying to be something she wasn't, but fitting into the spaces that had been empty. She came to Sunday dinners when she wasn't traveling for work. She helped Lily study for her algebra tests, proving to have a head for numbers that left Daniel in the dust. She stayed over sometimes now, in Daniel's room, while Lily pretended not to notice or care. They'd decided what to do with the Wintergreen estate. Turn it into a scholarship foundation for low-income students pursuing higher education, with a focus on those who'd faced family obstacles similar to what they'd experienced. It felt right, taking something that had represented separation and manipulation and transforming it into opportunity. The paperwork was nearly complete. The lawyers almost finished with the conversion. In a few weeks, the Victor Chen Educational Foundation would officially open, and 2 young people from disadvantaged backgrounds would become its first scholarship recipients. He would have hated this, you know, Evelyn said as they reviewed the final documents at Daniel's kitchen table. The whole point of him keeping us apart was that he thought you'd hold me back from reaching my potential, and here we are, using his estate to make sure other kids don't get held back by family circumstances. Maybe. Or maybe he would have liked knowing that his mistakes ended up helping someone. I've been thinking about that night you showed up here, when you said you'd come to collect a debt, the debt I claimed you'd owed me for 20 years? Yeah, that debt. What was it really? What were you actually asking for? Evelyn was quiet for a moment, considering. Honestly, I don't think I knew. I was angry at my father, grieving, desperate to find someone who understood what I'd lost. I think I was asking you to prove that what we had was real, that those 20 years of regret and what-ifs weren't just me being sentimental. And did I prove it? You did something better. You showed me that even if we can't get back what we lost, we can build something new from what remains. She reached across the table and took his hand. You gave me a second chance at having a real life instead of just a successful one. The sound of a key in the lock announced Lily's return from school. She burst in with her usual energy, dropping her backpack by the door and making a beeline for the refrigerator. Guess what? She said around a mouthful of apple. I got into that program, the one for gifted students at the Science Center. Lily, that's amazing. Daniel stood to hug his daughter. Miss Chen, you helped with the application, so thank you. I definitely wouldn't have gotten in without your advice on the essay. You would have, Evelyn said warmly. But I'm glad I could help. This is a huge opportunity. Lily grabbed another apple and headed toward her room, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and Dad? Miss Chen? When are you two actually getting engaged? Because Emily Watkins asked me today if you were getting married, and I had to say, I don't know. Which was embarrassing. With that conversational bomb dropped, she disappeared into her room, leaving 2 adults staring at each other in shock. Did she just? Evelyn started. Yeah, she did. She's been on this kick lately about us making things official. I've told her we're taking things at our own pace, but apparently, she's decided we're moving too slowly. Is she wrong? Evelyn asked quietly. What? Is she wrong? Are we moving too slowly? Evelyn stood and walked to the window, her back to him. We've been together, really together, for 4 months now. We both know this isn't casual. We both know where this is heading. So, why are we pretending we don't? Daniel joined her at the window. Outside, the September evening was settling in, the sky going purple and gold. Because I'm scared, because the last time I proposed to someone, we got 6 good years before cancer took her. Because I don't want to jinx what we have by wanting too much. That's superstition, Daniel. Bad things happen, regardless of whether we acknowledge our happiness. I know. But knowing something logically and feeling it emotionally are different things. Evelyn turned to face him. Let me ask you something. If you knew, absolutely knew that we'd have 50 years together, would you propose? In a heartbeat. And if you knew we'd only have 5 years? Daniel thought about Sarah, about the 6 years they'd shared, about how he wouldn't trade a single day of that time despite how it ended. I'd still propose. Then, the length of time doesn't actually matter, does it? What matters is whether you want to build a life with me. Not someday, not eventually, but now. Starting today. Is this you proposing to me? Daniel asked, his lips quirking into a smile. Would you want that? A powerful CEO proposing to a high school English teacher? Evelyn, because I will if you want. I've spent most of my life doing things the traditional way, following the rules, maintaining appearances. But this us isn't traditional. We're 2 people who loved each other as kids, lost each other for 20 years, and found our way back through grief and mistakes and a dying man's final attempt at redemption. Nothing about our story is conventional. Daniel felt his heart hammering in his chest. What are you saying? I'm saying, marry me, Daniel Brooks. Not because it's been enough time or because it's the logical next step, but because I love you. I loved you at 18, and I love you now. And they're different loves, but they're both real. I love your terrible jokes and your endless patience with your students and the way you love your daughter. I love that you chose forgiveness over bitterness and possibility over safety. Marry me, and let's stop wasting time being careful. Daniel stared at this extraordinary woman CEO, former first love, current partner, possible future wife, and felt 20 years of caution and fear crack open. Life was fragile and uncertain, and sometimes cruel. But it was also beautiful and surprising, and full of second chances if you were brave enough to reach for them. Yes, he said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Evelyn's face broke into a radiant smile. Really? Really? Though I should probably point out that traditionally, the person being proposed to is the one who says yes. Traditional is overrated. Besides, you can propose to me later with a ring and everything if you want. Oh, I definitely want. But for now, he pulled her close and kissed her. Properly, deeply, the way he'd been wanting to for months but had been too afraid to fully embrace. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless and grinning. The sound of Lily's door opening interrupted the moment. So? Their daughter called from the hallway. Did somebody propose? Because I heard some talking and now it's suspiciously quiet. Get out here, kiddo, Daniel called back. Lily appeared, trying and failing to look nonchalant. We're getting married, Evelyn said, still holding Daniel's hand. Finally, Lily punched the air in triumph. Do you know how embarrassing it's been watching you two dance around this for months? Emily's mom already asked me to be in the wedding, and I had to tell her there wasn't even an engagement yet. How did Emily's mom know before we did? Daniel asked. Dad. Literally everyone knew. You two are not subtle. Evelyn laughed a full, genuine laugh that Daniel was still getting used to hearing from her. Your daughter is terrifying. Yeah. But she's our daughter now. Hope you're ready for that. Our daughter, Evelyn repeated, testing the words. She looked at Lily. If that's okay with you, Lily. I know I'm not your mom, and I'm not trying to replace her, but I'd be honored to be part of your family officially. Lily rolled her eyes in that particular way only teenagers could manage. Obviously, it's okay. Why do you think I've been pushing Dad to hurry up? I'm not getting any younger, and I'd like to have a stable family unit before I leave for college in 5 years. 5 years, Daniel echoed. God, where does the time go? Forward, Lily said sagely. Time goes forward, which is what you two should do too. Now, can we order pizza to celebrate? Romano's makes a really good veggie supreme. As his daughter called in their order and Evelyn sent texts to her assistant about clearing her schedule for the next few days, Daniel stood in his small kitchen and felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for what might have been that was lost and gone, but for what was. This small, imperfect, beautiful present moment. The debt that Evelyn had come to collect all those months ago had been repaid, though not in any way either of them had expected. It turned out the debt had never been about the past at all. It had been about the future, about giving each other permission to move forward, to risk happiness again, to believe that broken things could be mended and lost things could, sometimes, be found. Later that night, after pizza and planning and Lily's eventual retreat to her room, Daniel and Evelyn sat together on the couch, her head on his shoulder, watching the city lights twinkle through the window. Are you happy? She asked quietly. Yeah, I really am. Not just content? Not just content. Actually, genuinely happy. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Thank you for showing up at my door in the middle of winter. For being brave enough to come collect that debt. Thank you for opening the door. And for being the kind of person worth waiting 20 years to find again. They sat, in comfortable silence, two people who'd traveled separate roads for 2 decades before finding their way back to each other. It wasn't the fairy tale they might have imagined at 18. It was better because it was real, earned, built on loss and growth and the courage to try again. Outside, the September night deepened into full darkness. Inside, in a small apartment filled with love and laughter and the promise of tomorrow, 3 people slept soundly, no longer haunted by the past but hopeful for the future. And somewhere, perhaps, Victor Chen's restless spirit finally found peace, knowing that the mistakes he'd made had ultimately led his daughter to happiness. It had taken 20 years, a terminal diagnosis, and a debt that was never really owed. But, in the end, the story had found its proper ending, or rather, its beginning, because the best love stories don't end, they simply transform, chapter by chapter, into something richer and more complex than their opening pages could have promised. This was their story now. Not the one they'd started at 18, but the one they'd earned at 40, written in choices and second chances and the quiet courage of opening closed doors. The debt was paid. The winter had ended, and spring, with all its possibility, was blooming everywhere they looked.